Sometimes if you want to get a really good PC but you don't have the money, going used is going to be your best bet. You can get on eBay, Mercari, Facebook Marketplace. You can find deals on nearly anything for a PC that you need, but the most expensive part of your PC is going to be your graphics card. Now, sometimes when you pick a card up, it might be a little dirty. It's used, right? You're not gonna get pristine condition. And so if you get one, it's a little dirty, you're gonna wanna clean it up a bit. And that's exactly where this card will come into play today. I ended up picking this card up. It is a GTX 1070. It's an Asus card for only 50 bucks. I believe this card came out in 2017, but that doesn't mean that it's a slump. It's actually still a pretty solid card, especially if you can get it for 50 bucks. Deals like this are all over Facebook Marketplace, all over eBay, like I said, Mercari. There's a few different sites you can go to, and if you look carefully enough and long enough, you will be able to find a few deals. But as you can see, this card is filthy. This card needs to be cleaned. So today, we are going to show you exactly what you have to do to take care of an old card like this, to clean it off, to repaste it and get it right back to working good as new. Now, since it has been so long since the 1070 rolled out, it is very important that we redo the thermal paste on this as well when we clean it. So we're gonna go over this whole process. This thing, does it have a date on it actually? I don't see a manufacturing date, but I'll put a little thing on screen showing what year exactly. But either way, these have been out for a while. So as you can see, I hope the overhead shot's actually getting this. Because of this little thing right here, this little sticker that shows us that it hasn't been repasted. So we're just gonna stab right on through it, and we are going to remove the cooler. That is gonna be the first thing that we do with this card. Since every one of these cards is gonna be different, I can't fully tell you what to expect, but I do know that it's a good idea to set these screws aside just in case they're different, because I'm looking here and they definitely are. So it's a good idea to set them in an order that you're gonna remember, so that way you can put it back together exactly how you took it apart. Because the last thing that you're gonna wanna do is to take this entire thing apart, only to not remember what screws go where. And then it takes you way longer to put it back together. And actually this cooler here does have more screw down points. I believe an extra 6 screws here. Oh, I just looked in there and that is nasty. And just like that, this is so much worse than I thought. Oh, we'll remove the fan header. So you got your heatsink right here. This is what does all the cooling. This is what touches the die. As you can see, this is nasty. But then inside, you can see on the fans, the bottom side, all the dirt that's built up, dust and everything. Inside the shroud there, it definitely ain't white. That's for sure. And then here is the card itself. This is the main part of the GPU. This right here is what this cooler's for. It is funny though, like the 1070 when it came out was a high-end card. The coolers now are huge. Like compared to today, that cooler is actually pretty small. Even this right here, I mean, look at all the dirt and dust and everything that's on that. We definitely have our work cut out for us today. I don't think I've ever actually cleaned a card this bad. Gotta roll our sleeves up for this, which by the way, if you like this hoodie, you want one for yourself, the link to buy the merch is down below in the description. So I guess we'll start out with the most important part of this entire thing, the actual GPU itself. I don't even wanna do this anymore, honestly. Like that's just gross. We're gonna tackle this a little bit differently. I'm gonna use a paper towel with a little bit of rubbing alcohol on there just to get it wet and we can pick up the larger chunks of dust with that. So we'll just spray that down. I would like to get a majority of the bigger chunks off. So we are gonna do just that. You gotta be careful though. As you can see, hopefully in the overhead shot, there's a lot of little tiny things all over. Just be careful when you're working around those. You don't want to, accidentally rip one off because you were rushing the job or you're doing it too aggressively or whatever. This is an expensive part of the build. It's an expensive part of your PC. If you're gonna be gaming on it, this is the main part that you should care about. And I know we're gonna get people in the comments, but Jordan, the processor is important too. It is important, okay? But you can run games in 4K on an i3 processor. You're not gonna be able to run games in 4K without a GPU. Let's keep that in mind. So I guess since we're here, let's just go ahead and we're just gonna douse this. Honestly, rubbing alcohol is exactly what you wanna use. Isopropyl alcohol, just drench it. This stuff is one, not gonna conduct, and two, it is going to evaporate well before you put it back into your system. So that way you won't have to worry about any conduction or anything like that, which I don't think it's gonna do anyways. So we're gonna take this old thermal compound right here. We are going to use a Q-tip and carefully clear off the die. Just need to absolutely drench that thermal paste. That is some crusty, gross, stuck on thermal paste right there. Man, that is stuck on there. Holy crap. I've actually never seen thermal paste stuck quite that bad. Like, it's hard. That's what she said. Normally, you want to make sure that you're always super careful around this part, but I'm actually going to have to apply a little bit of force. Now, luckily, I have done this quite a few times with other cards in the past, so I kind of know what I can and cannot do. But don't let this scare you away either. If you're going to be doing this with one of your cards, or if you do happen to find one used, picking up a card for 50 bucks and then doing this process is not going to do anything other than teach you kind of how these things work and kind of teach you a little bit more about the process of how these things run. If all else fails, very educational to do on your own. It is something that I recommend that you do, even if you're still using a card from this era. The cooler the card, the higher it's going to boost, and you're going to want to keep temperatures under control. So if it gets too hot and it starts to slow itself down because you have bad thermal paste, then your card's not going to perform well. So even if you're using a 1070 or just a 10 series card in general, after saying this, hopefully you're kind of inspired to go ahead and clean it, because this is, I kind of wish I could listen to music as I do this, but then I would have to pause it every time I talk. And I talk a lot. That looks significantly better than what we had before. So now what we're gonna do is we're actually just gonna take this, you saw me do it earlier, we're just gonna spray this thing down, and we are going to take a Q-tip and just, you know, just go over the card. Just back and forth. Be careful going around the little components on here, but we're just gonna do everything that we can to get as much dust and grime and anything that could be and is on this card, and we are going to remove it carefully, but also efficiently. Let's make sure that this thing's as clean as we can possibly get the card, so that way, when we put it in our system, it's basically brand new. I don't know if you guys can see how much dust I'm actually getting off of this thing. I'm gonna get my air duster and we're gonna just get whatever remaining chunks are here out. Also, I'm gonna turn on the air purifier. I feel like I'm gonna need it. Good as new. And now that this is all clean and done, we can just set that off to the side. Now for the next step here, what we're gonna do is we're actually gonna clear off the heat sink itself. As you can see, there's some thermal paste stuck on there as well. Same process, we're gonna take our rubbing alcohol and we are going to spray that down, let it soak in, now that I realize how bad that actually is. I guess that fell off as well. I mean, this is perfect. I was gonna remove these anyways. You need them. They are the thermal pads that will actually connect the RAM to the GPU itself, because as this is sitting there, it's gonna sit very similar to this. But we're gonna carefully remove this from the heat sink, just because we are gonna reuse those. I don't have replacement thermal pads. I like just to, you know, lay them down, put a little bit of alcohol on there, take a Q-tip, we'll just clean them up that way. That way, they can be clean. Oh, see, I mean, that one just ripped. It'll be okay, though. Have to be a little bit more careful. Now, what I am actually gonna do is I'm gonna take this into the bathroom and actually just run it under some water to get that dust out. As long as you dry it well, you know, these can get wet. No electronic parts in here. So just run it under some water, get the dust out of the fins. You can see it is pretty dirty in there. So just running it under the sink is going to be almost all you need to do to clean it off. Okay, that is significantly better. It's wet, but it's clean. I'm actually gonna use my air duster. We're gonna just blast out whatever little bit of water's left, and then we can move on to the fans and the shroud, which honestly, that's the part I'm scared of the most. I'm just gonna blow it under the desk, you know? And there we go. Good as new. Still a little wet, you can see some water on there, that's fine, but this thing is perfectly clean, which is exactly what we want. I guess now that means we move on to this. So what I'm actually gonna do with this is, because there is such thick layer of dust and dirt in there, I'm actually gonna take it out and I'm gonna use this air duster. That's our first line of defense right here. We are gonna use that on there. We are gonna remove as much of this as we can, and then we'll come right back. That is so much better, and all I did was hit it with air. If you don't want to go through this whole process of using alcohol and Q-tips and all that, at least hit it with air, okay? Look at the difference that made. So the next step then, we are actually going to remove the fans, and we are going to clean each one of those individually. Our little screws in here that you can actually get a screwdriver between the fan blades, and you can pick these up. They are very, very tiny screws, so make sure you are very careful with them. Obviously, take your card apart as far as you're comfortable doing so. I'm fairly comfortable doing this, so I have no issue taking it down absolutely as far as we can. But obviously, if you don't want to take the fans off, then don't take the fans off. You don't have to. It does, however, make them a little bit easier to clean. There's also one more screw, with this card at least, on the underside, that's also holding the fan in place. After we take that off, there's 5 screws per fan. Super easy to take off, and it just makes it that much easier to clean it. And it allows you to get underneath of it and get a few places that you wouldn't normally be able to reach. Now that we got the fans and the shroud separated, I'm actually going to set the shroud off to the side. We're going to focus on the fans right now, and we'll get to that part last, because honestly, all I'm going to do with this is run it underwater, just like we did with the fin stack, and just remove any last little remnants of dust. But the fans, one thing that I like to do is, you know, same as everything else, we're going to use some rubbing alcohol. We're going to get the fins, you know, and honestly, all we're going to do with that is we're going to take a Q-tip and we're going to manually rub each one. That's what she said. And it's a process that takes time. It is a tedious process, but at the end of the day, it is one that is going to make this PC look so much better. And even if it doesn't improve performance all that much, just getting any little bit of dust that you can off of this is going to absolutely be a game changer in how it looks in the end. And let's be real, when it comes to building PCs, let's make them look good. Let's make them look clean, you know? Here we go, we've cleaned off every side there, every fin there. Now let's move on to the back side. And then all we got left is that shroud, which, like I said, I'm just gonna run that under some water. There's no RGB lighting in there, there's no electronics. It is just a basic run-of-the-mill white plastic shroud, meaning that water is not going to do anything to hurt it. We're going to clean off that shroud, get the big chunks of dust off first, and then there's a few things here that might not come off with just water, so we're going to take some rubbing alcohol and we're going to scrub that down. First rinse, I guess, is done. We're going to dry it off quick with our air duster, and then whatever we see left, we're going to just take away with some rubbing alcohol, and then it's time for reassembly. We're almost done. This is surprisingly clean. There's a few things here that one just came off with my hand. Anything that is still on here that's dirty or gross after we're done with this stuff, that's when we use the rubbing alcohol and the Q-tips. But that does look incredibly clean, even without using any rubbing alcohol, so we might not have to. The nice thing about white is you're able to tell exactly how good of a job you did cleaning it, because obviously you can see every single little speck of dust on this thing. The thing about dust is that it definitely likes to hide in every single crevice that you can find. All those hard to reach places that you don't think to ever look in, you're gonna find some. It's time to reassemble. Basically exactly what we just did, but opposite, duh. First things first, we are going to re-put the fans in. You're gonna wanna probably do this screw first, just so that way you can hold it in place, and then you can go through and do the top ones. We'll go ahead, we'll put this wire through just like so. We will screw in this fan, plug the other fan back in. Now we'll flip it over. We will put our screws back in on the front side here. Our overhead camera got a little warm, so we lost it for the time being. Today I learned this had a screen protector on it. To reassembly without a top cam. Okay, now when we had this on before, these thermal pads were only covering here and here. I don't know why there wasn't thermal pads covering this row right here, but that's exactly how it was from ASUS. That's exactly how we're gonna put it back together. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna take our thermal paste and we are going to put a nice little dot here on the die, just like that. So that way when we, you know, put down this heatsink, it's gonna spread out. So a little dot just like that for thermal paste. And we are going to actually put the heatsink back on. And what you're gonna wanna do is when you get it lined up, which it's gonna go right there. You're gonna wanna take this 4 screws that came with it. So you're gonna wanna do a few twists, go to the other corner, do a few twists over here. Basically what you're gonna wanna do is you're gonna wanna spread out the tension. So that way one side doesn't get ridiculously tight while the other one, you know, has no tension at all. Because all that's gonna do is it's gonna take all that thermal paste and it's gonna push it to one side, and you're not gonna get good coverage across your card. So if you go with nice even pressure all the way around, then all you're doing is ensuring that it's going to get pressed down perfectly flat, which would in turn guarantee that it's going to evenly spread. So it's always recommended that you go, you know, corner, 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 and you just slowly do that circle, just a few twists, few twists, few twists, you know, and just keep this pattern going until they're all tight. So now it's time to put the shroud and the fans back on. So obviously make sure that you plug your fans back in. You're gonna wanna make sure that you get that. And once you plug those in, you can go ahead, tuck that cable away, screw down the shroud, and then you're done. And just like that, night and day difference in how this card looks. This is perfectly clean and super, super happy with it. The only thing left to do would be to make sure that this thing works. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna throw it in a system, probably my ITX rig that we put together in a previous video, and we'll just confirm that both fans spin. We'll confirm that we get a post, and I'll play a game on it for maybe an hour and just make sure temperatures are okay. But that's essentially how that goes. So there we are, card is in the system. It's working phenomenal. Temperatures never hit higher than 74 degrees. I actually put a slight overclock on it and was able to get the boost clock up 150. Even with that, on Sea of Thieves, max frame rate 1440p, or uncapped frame rate, I should say. 1440p, thing ran flawlessly. Temperatures were under control. Card's nice and quiet. I mean, it works fine. So there you go. That is how you tear down, clean off, repaste, and re-put together, reassemble. That's the word. That's English. That's how you do that all to a GPU. If you learned something, make sure you hit that like button. If you didn't learn anything, still hit the like button and comment the poop emoji or just any emoji. Just leave a comment, okay? But thanks for watching. Thanks for hanging out, guys. Make sure you hit that subscribe button, and I will see you in the next one. Bye-bye.